There was a vanilla cake on the kitchen counter that morning, homemade, slightly uneven frosting, one corner slumping like it was tired of pretending to be festive. Margaret had baked it herself, which was weird. She didn't cook, not even on holidays. I remember standing there, half awake, wondering what the hell was going on. The house smelled like fake sweetness, and something else I couldn't name. It was my birthday. I had just turned 18. They waited until afternoon to drop it. I was still in my hoodie and pajama pants when Sylvia called me into the living room. Margaret didn't even look up. Her hands were folded in her lap like she was holding in a secret that burned. "Sit down, Eli," Sylvia said. Her voice had that clipped tone, the one she used when I forgot to wipe the kitchen counter or left dishes in the sink. I sat. Didn't ask questions. Didn't make a face. I'd learned a long time ago not to give them anything they could use against me. "You were adopted," Margaret said. No lead in, no soft tone, just those 3 words, like tossing a stone into water and watching it sink. "We took you in when you were 2, Sylvia added, like she was filling in a blank. "Your birth father couldn't care for you. We did what we could." Silence. They didn't hug me, didn't cry, didn't even look sorry. Then Margaret reached under the couch and slid a duffel bag toward me. Black, faded. I'd seen it before, used to hold old winter coats. "There's some money in there, a few clothes. You're staying at the Glenford Lodge for now until you can figure things out." Just like that. On my birthday, I nodded. Not because I understood, just because I didn't want to show my hands were shaking. "Thanks," I said, and I meant it, not the way they thought. They didn't know what I'd found 3 weeks ago. They had no idea that I already knew. I had found the letter in the hallway cabinet, hidden beneath tax forms and outdated coupons. It was addressed to a man named Dr. Jonathan Merik. Inside was a birth certificate, my name, his name. No mother listed. He was my father. But there was more, a news article, printed from an old microfilm scan, yellowed, blurry, but I read it again and again until it etched itself into me. Local psychiatrist institutionalized after whistleblowing incident at Northgate Behavioral Clinic. Jonathan Merik had tried to expose something big, something they buried, just like him. And now I was walking out of that house. Not empty, not broken, but full of purpose. I wasn't leaving in shame. I was leaving with a plan. The Glenford Lodge smelled like mildew, bleach, and cigarette ghosts. The kind of place you ended up, not where you chose to be. I spent the night on the top bunk, clutching my duffel like it was worth something. Truth is, it wasn't. Just a couple shirts, 2 $10 bills, and that envelope. That envelope was everything. Before the sun was even up, I was already outside. The air was sharp, like it wanted to remind me I was still alive. I walked 40 minutes to the public library. Glenford's library was old, like microfilm machine old, which was exactly what I needed. I pulled out the reel I'd stashed last week in locker 12, slid it in, cranked it slow. There it was again. Same headline, same blurred black and white photo. A man in a wrinkled suit being led away in cuffs. Jonathan Merik, sharp jaw, calm eyes. The article read like damage control. Dr. Merik accused a fellow physician of unethical psychiatric practices at Northgate Clinic. His claims were unsubstantiated. Within weeks, he was deemed mentally unstable and transferred to institutional care. No charges filed against the accused. No names. No follow-up. Just silence. Except the doctor he tried to expose? Yeah, her name was all over our house. Margaret Halston, my mom. She wasn't just a donor. She was the system. I printed the article and tucked it back into the envelope. The librarian gave me a look. Maybe it was the shaking hands. Maybe it was the intensity. I didn't care. Back at the lodge, I wrote everything down. Dates, names, connections. Jonathan wasn't unfit. He wasn't dangerous. He tried to protect people. And for that, they locked him away. Me? I was the byproduct, a trophy. They raised me under their roof like some kind of souvenir. That night, I couldn't sleep. My brain was too loud. What if he was still alive? What if he remembered me? The next morning, I started making calls. Public records offices, psychiatric networks. Nobody knew what happened to Northgate Clinic or where their patients had gone. Then I reached one woman, an older voice, soft but alert. She hesitated when I said the name. "I'll call you back," she whispered. 2 hours later, she did. "There's a place," she said. Northgate transferred some of their long-term patients to a facility upstate, quietly, no press. It's called West Hill Center for Mental Rehabilitation in Maplebridge, about 3 hours north of you. No public records, no patient lists. But I can tell you this, some of them are still there. I didn't ask how she knew. I just wrote it down. I had a name. I had a place, but no car, no money, no idea what I'd find. I sat outside the library, notebook in my lap, trying to budget bus fare I didn't have. I wasn't gonna beg. I wasn't gonna steal, but I was going to find him. Across the street, there was a bakery with a handwritten sign, "Help Wanted, Dishwasher." No experience needed. I stood up, crossed the road, and walked in. The manager at the bakery looked like he hadn't slept in a week and didn't care to start now. He was wiping crumbs off a tray when I asked if they were still hiring. He looked me up and down, hoodie still wrinkled, hair unwashed, shadows under my eyes that felt permanent. "You can start tomorrow," he said, 6 a.m. sharp, back door. I nodded and thanked him before he could change his mind. For the next 5 days, I washed dishes until my fingertips cracked from heat and soap. My shoulders ached. My legs throbbed. My hands smelled like yeast and bleach, even after 2 showers. I didn't talk to anyone, didn't smile, just counted the money as it slowly added up in a crumpled envelope beneath my bunk. On the 6th morning, I had enough, $117. It wasn't much, but it was all I needed. The 10:40 a.m. bus to Maplebridge was mostly empty. Just 2 older men asleep near the back and a teenage girl scrolling her phone with her earbuds in. I sat by the window and didn't look up once. The ride felt longer than 3 hours. Towns passed by like they'd been paused for decades. Shuttered diners, rusted fences, sidewalks that led nowhere. By the time we reached Maplebridge, clouds had started to gather. The air felt heavier up here, colder, like the sky knew what I was about to do. The West Hill Center for Mental Rehabilitation sat at the top of a long hill, partly hidden behind trees that had lost most of their leaves. The building looked more like an old boarding school than a hospital. Brick walls stained with time, windows tall and narrow like it didn't want you seeing too much. The sign out front had missing letters. Just Still Center now. Fitting. Inside, the lighting was dim, and the air smelled like dust and old coffee. The woman at the front desk didn't even glance up when I stepped in. She had a clipboard in one hand, a pencil tucked behind her ear, and a voice like she'd been doing this for too long. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to visit a patient," I said. I tried to keep my voice even, my hands steady. "Name? Jonathan Merik." She blinked, finally looking at me. "Relation?" The first paused. "I'm his son." She stared for a second too long. Her eyes flicked to the clipboard, then back to me. "He doesn't get visitors," she said. "I know," I replied. "That's why I'm here." Another moment. Then she sighed, picked up the phone, and dialed an internal extension. "Merik." "Yeah." "Says he's family." Pause. "No, he's alone." She nodded once, then pointed down the hall. "Second door on the left." "Keep it brief." The hallway was silent except for the buzz of overhead lights. My footsteps felt too loud, like I didn't belong. When I reached the room, the door creaked open without resistance. He was sitting in a chair by the window, thin, pale, hair gray around the edges, hands folded neatly in his lap. He didn't turn when I stepped inside. I cleared my throat. "Jonathan?" He turned slowly. His eyes, sharp, sunken, but alert, met mine. "I'm Eli," I said. "You had a son, 18 years ago. They told me you were unstable, dangerous, but I know what happened. I read the article. I know what you tried to do." For a moment, he didn't speak, just stared at me like I was some half-remembered dream. Then, his fingers twitched. His posture changed, like something inside him woke up. "They still watch me," he whispered. "They think I've forgotten, but I haven't." His voice was cracked, dry from disuse, but the words were clear. My stomach tightened. "Who watches you?" I asked. He looked toward the ceiling, the corners of the room. There were no cameras I could see, but he stared like he remembered exactly where they used to be. They said it was therapy, group observation, but it wasn't. They recorded everything, tested things, drugs, memory suppression, psychological manipulation. They used us. Used you for what? Compliance, obedience, behavioral control. They wanted to see how far they could push someone without breaking them. "And you tried to stop it," I said. He gave a slow nod. "I kept records, filed a report, sent it to the board. A week later, I was here, labeled delusional. My throat was dry. I stepped closer. And my mother's?" He flinched when I said it. "Margaret Halston." His voice cracked. "She wasn't supposed to take you. She was part of the foundation. She was on the board that reviewed the trial ethics. I warned them about her. That was enough. She had my file sealed. She sealed everything. You weren't placed by accident. You were taken to prove their system worked." I didn't speak. Couldn't. The rage burned so quietly it almost felt calm. "I begged to see you," Jonathan said, softer now. "They told me you'd been adopted, but they never said who or why." I reached into my coat and pulled out the envelope. Inside were the documents, the article, my birth certificate. "You don't have to wonder anymore," I said. He took it slowly, like it might crumble in his hands. His fingers trembled. "You shouldn't be here," he said finally. "If they know you found me, I don't care," I interrupted. "You're not crazy. You never were. I'm going to prove it." That's when I heard footsteps in the hallway. Jonathan's body tensed. A shadow passed outside the door. Then a knock. A nurse stepped in. Tall, thin man with graying hair and tired eyes. His name tag read George Lane. "I'm sorry," he said with a professional smile. "Visiting hours are over." Jonathan didn't look at me again, just turned back toward the window, folding his hands in his lap like a statue. As I walked past George, he leaned in and whispered, "You're not the first to come asking about him." I froze, but the last one never came back. The door closed behind me before I could ask anything else. Outside, the wind hit me like a slap. My breath came in clouds, but my fingers weren't cold from the weather. Jonathan wasn't a patient. He was a prisoner, and now I was a problem. I didn't go back to the lodge that night. I couldn't. My head was too full. My hands were still shaking. And the last words from the nurse, the last one never came back, kept playing on loop like a song. I couldn't turn off. I found a cheap motel 2 towns over, the kind with flickering signs and wallpaper that peeled like burnt skin. I locked the door, stuffed a towel under the crack, and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the envelope. Jonathan was telling the truth. I could feel it, not because I wanted to believe him, but because everything fit too well. The silence, the adoption, the way Margaret had always looked at me not like a son, but like a project. And then there was that nurse, George Lane, calm, measured, and clearly aware of more than he was saying. I stayed up all night on my phone, digging, searching every corner of the internet for scraps forums, archived sites, Reddit posts that had been downvoted to oblivion. I found mentions of West Hill Center, old Yelp reviews from ex-employees, and one Reddit thread that stopped me cold. Posted 6 years ago by throwaway Claire 1998. "Has anyone ever heard of a place called Northgate or West Hill? My professor says it's tied to state-run psych projects from the late 90s. I found patient transfer logs but then got locked out of the database. Is there a way to FOIA mental health facilities without triggering alerts? Asking for research. I clicked her profile. It was empty. Deleted. Another name erased. I copied the post and saved it. Then I searched the username in reverse lookup forums. No hits, but I did find a comment under an old college newspaper article. Same handle, Claire Rothman, journalism major. Went missing in her sophomore year. Official report said voluntary disappearance. No foul play suspected. Sounded familiar, like every other thread tied to Margaret Halston's empire. By sunrise, I had a plan. I didn't have reach, but maybe someone out there still did. I remembered a podcast I'd heard months ago while doing dishes, something about whistleblowers and hidden institutions. The host had a voice that felt more like a weapon than a comfort. Sharp, focused. Simon Ellis. He'd been fired from a major newspaper after publishing a piece on medical cover-ups. The rumor was he didn't stop digging, just went off-grid. I had no idea if he'd answer, but I drafted a message anyway. My name is Eli. I found evidence of state-sanctioned psychological experiments. I think my birth father was framed for exposing it. The foundation that runs it? One of its directors raised me. I have documents, video files. And I think another investigator, Claire Rothman, disappeared, trying to do what I'm doing. I don't want to disappear too. I attached scans of the birth certificate, the article about Jonathan, and the printout from Claire's Reddit post. I didn't expect a reply, but 2 hours later I got one. Where are you? We should talk. In person. Attached was a location, a cabin in northern Vermont, 6 hours north, deep woods. Isolated. Perfect for hiding or dying. I texted back one word. On my way. The drive was brutal. I used the last of my money to rent a secondhand car from a sketchy lot with no questions asked. The heat barely worked. Snow drifted across the roads like ghosts, looking for bodies to haunt. By the time I pulled up to the cabin, my fingers were numb. Simon was already waiting outside. Late 40s. Tall. Quiet confidence, but none of the smugness I expected. His eyes scanned me like a scanner app. No wasted motion, no greeting. Just a nod. Phone, he said. I handed it over without argument. He dropped it into a lead-lined drawer inside the cabin. Inside, the place was surprisingly warm. Books piled everywhere. A table with 3 laptops, none newer than 2015. No Wi-Fi. Just Ethernet cables and hard drives. He sat, didn't offer tea or coffee, just motioned for me to give him what I had. I pulled out the flash drive. He plugged it in. Silence stretched between us like a wire waiting to snap. Folders popped up one by one. Patient logs, behavioral trial. Videos transfer. Memos, Merik, internal, file Claire. R. Inquiry notes. Simon opened the last one first. I watched his face as he scrolled. It didn't change much, but his jaw tightened. She reached out to me, he said, voice low. Claire, about 6 years ago, said she had documents. Asked to meet, then vanished. She was on the same trail I am, I said. George, the nurse, said I wasn't the first to ask about Jonathan. He nodded. The foundation's clean on paper, but they're real files? These. He clicked through PDFs of falsified charts and drug trial rosters. This is enough to bury them, but we have to be smart. Meaning? Meaning if we leak it now, they'll squash it, spin it, turn you into a conspiracy kid lashing out at his family. But if we prep this right, copy it, distribute it, line up allies, they can't contain the blast. He pulled out an old metal case and laid it flat on the table. 6 USB drives, SSS, different passwords. We send each to someone we trust, ex-prosecutors, medical watchdogs, international media. No single point of failure. I watched as he copied the files in silence. Each progress bar felt like a countdown to something irreversible. When it was done, he slid one drive across the table to me. Keep this off-grid, hidden. If anything happens to me, send it everywhere at once. I nodded. I didn't trust many people, but I trusted urgency. I need to get Jonathan out, I said. He's not safe. Simon rubbed his temples. You show up now. They'll shut him down, but after this goes public, he might finally be leverage. Then he turned toward me, slower now. His voice softened. They lied to you, Eli. Gaslit you your whole life. But that's not what makes you dangerous to them. What does? You found the truth, and you didn't run. I slept at the cabin that night, restless, half expecting the windows to shatter or headlights to crawl up the driveway. But nothing came. By morning, the drives were gone, mailed across the country to 6 locations. Passwords delivered through encrypted calls. Simon moved like a man with nothing to lose and no time to waste. At noon, I got the message. A new number, one I recognized immediately. Margaret, I know what you've been doing. Come home. We need to talk. I met her at the old train station outside Glenford. Half the lights didn't work, and the benches smelled like stale rain and dust. Cameras in the corners blinked red, exactly how I wanted it. Witnesses, documentation. Margaret showed up in her usual beige coat, calm, composed. The kind of face you'd see on nonprofit brochures about hope and healing. If I hadn't known better, I might have thought she looked concerned. But I did know better. You've grown, she said, walking toward me like nothing had changed. You're very decisive now. Don't. I cut her off, sharp. Don't talk to me like you ever raised me with honesty. A flicker passed behind her eyes, just for a moment. Then she smiled, polished, motherly, manufactured. You don't understand what you've started. I understand enough, I said. You institutionalized my father, covered up abuse, built a fake life around me to protect a lie. And you're still pretending it was all for my benefit. She took a step closer. Eli, if you release that data, people will get hurt. Careers destroyed. Organizations dismantled. That's not justice, it's chaos. My jaw tightened. It's truth. Chaos is what you built to hide it. She lowered her voice. What about Jonathan? You think he'll survive the attention? You want the world to remember him as a symbol of tragedy? No, I said, voice flat. I want them to remember him as someone you tried to erase and failed. For a second, her face cracked, just a little. Then she straightened. You still have time to walk away from this. No harm, no scandal, no backlash. Just silence. Safety. That word safety felt like a blade. I already told Simon everything, I said. It's out there. Multiple copies. Multiple hands. There's no silencing this. Not anymore. Margaret's composure finally slipped. Her face twisted just slightly, like a mask sliding out of place. This will destroy you too, she said. Not angry, not pleading, just cold. No, I replied. It frees me. I turned and walked, didn't look back, didn't slow down. The first article dropped 3 days later, then the podcast. Then the internal memos Simon had mailed out started appearing in whistleblower leaks. The footage of Jonathan, sitting in a therapy chair, eyes glazed, voice broken, made it into the public sphere. People watched. People listened. The words West Hill and Northgate started trending. Within 10 days, the Attorney General's office launched a formal investigation into the Halston Foundation and its associated programs. Margaret's name appeared beside 3 others on a class action lawsuit filed by former patients' families. I wasn't in hiding, but I wasn't exactly public either. Simon helped me stay below the radar just long enough to let the fire spread. But one morning, about a week after the story hit national media, I knocked on his door with a single sentence ready. I have to get him out. Jonathan. Before they decided he was too dangerous to stay alive. We drove up to West Hill in the middle of the night. No press, no cameras. Just headlights slicing through fog and pine. Most of the staff had already resigned. The center was under federal review. George met us at the side entrance with a clipboard and dark circles under his eyes. "He's sedated, but stable," George said. "They haven't tried to transfer him yet." We moved quickly. No alarms, no resistance. I found Jonathan in the same chair, by the same window, hands folded exactly like before. Only this time, when I said his name, he turned instantly. "Eli," he whispered, "you're here. I told you I would be." He reached up with a shaking hand and touched my face like he didn't believe I was real. "We're leaving," I said. "Now." And we did. No restraints, no paperwork, just wind and night as we walked him out. The weeks that followed were messy but hopeful. Jonathan was placed under legal protection, began receiving trauma-focused care through an independent medical advocate Simon trusted. We got a small apartment outside Burlington. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms, 1 space heater, a view of a grocery store parking lot. But it was quiet and real. I went back to school online. JED, then community college courses. Journalism, ethics, digital forensics. Jonathan spent his days writing. Notes, testimonies. A slow reclaiming of everything they'd tried to take from him. Margaret never contacted me again. She was indicted 3 months later. But the story didn't end there. 6 months after the leak, Simon called me. He sounded cautious, like he wasn't sure whether to hope or warn. "We found someone," he said. "I think it's her, Claire. Except now, she went by another name, living in Oregon, off-grid, nervous, but alive." I flew out, met her at a coffee shop that looked like it had survived 3 earthquakes and a vinyl revolution. We sat across from each other for hours. "I thought I was alone," she said. "You weren't," I told her. "You just got lost in the noise." She gave me a small smile. "And now we make sure no one else does." Some days, I still wake up waiting for a knock on the door, for Margaret's face in a news clip, for Jonathan to disappear without a trace. But those days pass, and what's left is something I never had before. Not vengeance, not fame, just clarity. Epilogue, I started a newsletter. Nothing big, just a place for stories like ours. Whistleblowers, survivors. People who crawled out from systems designed to disappear them. We call it Signal Archive, because some signals don't fade. Some cut through the static and find exactly who they were meant for. And when they do, they change everything. Story 2, I used to think loyalty mattered. That if you gave people all your time, your money, your love, they'd never turn around and gut you like a fish. I was wrong. My name's Elise. I'm 42 and I just walked away from a 12-year relationship with a man I thought I'd grow old with. His name? Nathan. He's 47, and for 6 of those 12 years, we were married. But the part that still leaves a sour taste in my mouth? The betrayal didn't just come from him. It came from someone I'd called my daughter to, his kid from his first marriage, Morgan, who just turned 18. I raised her, fed her, paid for her braces, her therapy, her birthdays. Her mom passed when she was a baby, and I stepped in when she was 6. I was there for the nightmares, the report cards, the breakup with her high school boyfriend. And when she turned 18, we surprised her with a car. Or, well, I did. Nathan and I told her it was from both of us, but truth be told, I was the only one working. Nathan had been unemployed for 8 months by then. At first, it wasn't his fault. His company downsized, and he got swept up in the layoffs. I told him I'd cover us until he found his footing again. That's what partners do. But 2 months in, he decided he was going to start his own business, something he'd talked about before. But this time, it came without any planning. Just vague promises and notebooks filled with doodles disguised as business models. Still, I believed him. I always did. I picked up extra shifts, managed our bills, paid into our joint savings account for Morgan's college and our retirement while he played entrepreneur in sweatpants at home. Then came the business trip. He told me it was big, some investor wanted to meet in Portland. He made it sound legit, said this meeting could launch everything. I even booked his flights and hotel for him, paid out of my own account, of course. He was supposed to be gone 3 days. I remember kissing him goodbye at the door and feeling hopeful, supportive, stupid. The day before he was supposed to come home, I went into Morgan's room to grab a blanket while she was making herself a snack. Her phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from Nathan. Thanks for covering for me. Back tomorrow. Covering? I froze. I know it's wrong, but I unlocked her phone. I knew her passcode. She'd never cared about keeping it secret. What I found in her messages made my stomach turn. He'd landed safely. He was at the hotel. He'd met up with someone named Lexi. And get this, he thanked Morgan for convincing me the trip was real so I'd pay for it. I sat on her bed in silence, rereading everything. There were jokes, winks, references to Lexi, plans that had nothing to do with business. I put the phone back exactly how I found it and walked out of the room like a ghost. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling while Morgan laughed at Netflix in the living room like nothing had happened. My husband was on a fake business trip with another woman, and the girl I thought of as my daughter helped make it happen. The next morning, I drove to the bank before work. We had a joint account. Originally set up for savings, it had become a quiet symbol of partnership until I realized I was the only one feeding it. I closed it, transferred every last cent into my personal account. The bank didn't need both signatures to do it. Some of that money was his, technically, but after 8 months of covering every expense, I felt zero guilt. On the drive home, I cried. Not the sobbing, gasping kind, just silent tears that wouldn't stop. Then I wiped my face, practiced a smile, and went inside like nothing had changed. I waited until Nathan got home the next morning. Then I told them both to sit down. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I placed the documents from the bank on the coffee table, showed them the car title, which was in my name. I told Morgan I'd be needing the keys back. I told Nathan the account was closed. Their eyes widened, but neither of them said a word. Then I said the name, Lexi. Morgan flinched. Nathan stood up, started rambling. She's just a friend, he said. You're overthinking this. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to stress. Stop, I said. Don't insult me. He looked stunned. I think he expected me to cry or scream, but I didn't. I told them both to leave. At first, they tried to argue. Morgan said she didn't mean to hurt me. Nathan asked where he was supposed to go. I didn't respond. I just stood up and opened the front door. They packed up and left that afternoon. After they were gone, I called my dad, told him everything. He got me a lawyer by the next day. We filed the divorce papers that week. The days that followed were brutal. Nathan and Morgan showed up at my house every evening for a week, trying to talk. I didn't open the door. I didn't want closure. I wanted distance. The 8th night, I cracked the door open just long enough to tell them the divorce was filed. Nathan should find himself a lawyer. Then I shut the door again. They didn't come back after that, but Nathan's legal response came in 2 days later, and it was as shameless as you'd expect. He wanted the car Morgan's car. He wanted half the money from the closed account. And, get this, alimony. Apparently I'd blindsided him, left him homeless and broke without warning. I was the villain now. That's when I decided I was done playing nice. I called him. It was around 1:30 a.m., late enough to make the conversation feel vulnerable. I played the part, slightly tipsy, a little emotional, just hurt enough to let my guard down. I asked him why he was doing this, why the court stuff hurt worse than the affair. He started crying. He told me he didn't mean to cheat, that Lexi was a mistake, that he felt pressured, overwhelmed, and Lexi was just there, that they only hooked up once, that he'd do anything to make things right. I recorded the entire call. The next morning, I sent it to my lawyer. We live in a fault-based divorce state. Proof of infidelity changes everything. Without it, it's just he said, she said. But with a recording, his "I only did it once" became a confession. Suddenly his alimony case? Dead on arrival. 2 days later, we sat down for a mediation. My lawyer hit play on the recording first thing. Nathan's face went pale. Morgan wasn't there, but I imagine she got the fallout later. The session ended early. No agreement. Just awkward silence and a lawyer with nothing to say. That should have been satisfying. But of course, Morgan had to text me after. Said it was cruel to trick her dad like that I gave him false hope, that he was shattered now, that I was being manipulative. She ended the message by saying, "I'm sorry for what happened, but I had to support my dad." I read that message 3 times before blocking her. After that mediation session, everything hit me harder than I expected. Not the divorce. I'd already made peace with that. It was Morgan's message that got under my skin. For a minute, it worked. I felt guilty. Like maybe I'd gone too far. Like maybe setting that trap for Nathan was a step too low, even if he'd earned it. But guilt is sneaky like that. It likes to dress up as empathy, when really, it's just old wounds talking. Here's what most people don't realize. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it messes with your sense of reality. I wasn't just mourning the man I married. I was grieving the life I thought we had, the daughter I thought I'd raised. Morgan wasn't my biological child. I knew that. But for 12 years, I loved her like she was. I brushed her hair, helped her with homework, took her to the ER when she broke her wrist falling off a trampoline. I called her my daughter to everyone, neighbors, co-workers, friends. Not once did I ever say stepdaughter. So yeah, when she picked her dad's lie over my truth, that hurt. Deeper than I cared to admit. After that message, I did something I hadn't done since this whole thing started. I cried. Not just tears either. That full body, can't catch your breath kind of crying. The kind that leaves your throat raw. And then I blocked her. It was the hardest thing I've done in years. Harder than shutting down the bank account. Harder than packing Nathan's stuff into trash bags and leaving them by the front door. Because even after everything, some part of me still saw her as my kid. But that part had to go. People kept telling me, "She's 18. She's old enough to know better." And they were right. She was old enough to choose who to believe. Old enough to read those texts and still lie to my face. Old enough to make decisions and old enough to live with them. So I moved on. Or tried to. The house was too quiet after they left. And too big. Every room reminded me of a version of myself. I didn't recognize anymore the wife, the mother, the one who kept the lights on while everyone else played house. I started spending more time at work. Picked up extra shifts. Not because I needed the money, though it helped, but because the silence at home was deafening. Eventually, I started looking for a new place. Something smaller. Somewhere I wouldn't be reminded of birthday parties I'd planned alone, or dinners I cooked while Nathan scrolled on his phone pretending to brainstorm. In the meantime, the divorce dragged on. Even after the recording, Nathan tried to stall. He didn't want to pay legal fees. Said he wanted to resolve things like adults. But every time we met, he shifted the goalposts, asking for things he knew weren't his to claim. The car, for example, the one we gave Morgan. He said it should stay with her because she was just a kid who made a mistake, as if betrayal came with a learner's permit. He also wanted part of the savings, the same account he hadn't contributed to in almost a year. Said it was our future, like he hadn't already spent his share lying to my face and sleeping with Lexi. I wasn't trying to punish him. I just wanted to be done. And finally, after months of back and forth, he folded. I think it was a combination of things: his parents refusing to fund his legal battle, the realization that his confession had made him legally vulnerable, maybe even the shame. We signed the agreement. No alimony. No split of the savings. I kept the car, the house, the peace. Morgan didn't show up again after that. No calls, no texts, not even a vague apology sent at 2 a.m. I guess she got what she needed. Supporting her dad meant She kept his loyalty, at least for a while. And maybe that's what she wanted all along. Still, it stung. Not because I wanted her to pick me, but because I'd already picked her again and again for 12 years. And in the end, that didn't mean a thing. I started therapy around that time. My therapist asked me a question I wasn't ready for. Do you still see yourself as a mother? I didn't know how to answer. I still don't. What I do know is that I gave everything I had to a family that wasn't really mine. And when it came time to choose, they both left me standing in the wreckage like I was a stranger. But I wasn't a stranger. I was the one who kept that house running, who made sure Morgan never missed a school trip, who supported Nathan's fake business plans, and stayed loyal when there was nothing left to hold on to. I didn't cheat. I didn't lie. I didn't use anyone. I just loved the wrong people too hard for too long. Eventually, the first signed the final paperwork. The judge approved the divorce. It was done. I moved into a new apartment, 2 bedrooms, even though it was just me. I don't know why. Maybe I needed the extra space. Maybe I just wasn't ready to let go of the idea that I'd once had a family. I filled that second room with boxes, winter clothes, books I didn't want to shelve yet, old photo albums I wasn't brave enough to open. One day, I might. For now, I've been rebuilding. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from while I was too busy being supportive. I joined a hiking group, started cooking again for myself. This time, not because someone needed dinner on the table. The silence in the apartment feels different now. Less like loneliness, more like freedom. I don't check Nathan's social media. I don't ask mutual friends how he's doing. Honestly, I hope he's okay. Not because I care, but because I'm finally starting to understand something. Revenge isn't slamming the door. Sometimes it's walking away so quietly they don't even realize you're gone until the lights go out. And Morgan? I still think about her. I wish I didn't. But healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to live with the gap where love used to be. The first time I slept through the night in my new apartment, it caught me off guard. No dreams. No jolting awake from memories I didn't ask for. Just stillness. And in that stillness, peace. It had been months since the divorce was finalized. I thought I'd feel triumphant, like I'd won something, but that's not what it felt like at all. It felt more like stepping out of a burning house barefoot. Grateful to be alive, but still aching from the heat. The apartment was small, but it was mine. No photos of Morgan on the mantle. No half-started business plans strewn across the dining table. Just me, a new couch from a discount warehouse, and a shelf full of secondhand books. I didn't jump back into dating. That was never the goal. I just wanted to learn what silence sounded like when it wasn't full of lies. I kept myself busy at first. Signed up for a ceramics class. Started walking in the mornings with a podcast playing. Went to the library more often. Relearned how to cook for one. Every day was a quiet act of reclaiming my time, my space, my breath. And slowly I started sharing pieces of my story online. Not the dramatic parts, not the betrayal or the cheating or the courtroom strategy. Just thoughts, really. Moments. Like how it felt to decorate your own place and not worry if someone else would approve of the color scheme, or how nice it was to sit on the balcony at 7 a.m. with a mug of coffee and no one to impress. I didn't think much of it. But one video I made me talking about starting over at 42 alone but not lonely went kind of viral. I wasn't aiming for it. I didn't even use hashtags. Just posted it because I needed to say it out loud. People started following, commenting, sharing their own stories. Women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, talking about heartbreak, second chances, the pain of letting go of a daughter who chose someone else. It was comforting in a way I didn't know I needed, so I kept posting. Sometimes funny little rants about being single, sometimes soft, sad reflections about what healing really looks like. Before I knew it, I was building something, a community, a space where women could talk about starting again, not with bitterness, but with honesty. And eventually, it turned into more. A brand reached out about a sponsorship. Then another. Soon, I was getting enough steady work through content creation that I quit my job. I didn't expect it to be a career, but it became one. I started traveling, something I'd always wanted to do but never could. When I was married, vacations had to fit Nathan's non-existent schedule or Morgan's school calendar. Now, if I wanted to fly to Arizona for a week to hike and take photos, I just booked the ticket. It felt like freedom, not flashy, Instagram travel blogger freedom, just quiet, real freedom, the kind that tastes like fresh air after years in a windowless room. I stopped counting the days since the divorce. I stopped checking my email for updates from Nathan's lawyer. I stopped reading Morgan's last text. Sometimes people ask if I ever heard from them again. The answer's no. And honestly, that's how I know they really meant it when they left. Nathan never tried to fix anything. Morgan never circled back to apologize. They just disappeared. I think I expected some grand finale. A letter, a tearful voicemail, something. But real life doesn't work like movies. Sometimes people vanish, and the only closure you get is the silence they leave behind. And weirdly, that was enough. I don't hate them. I don't wish them harm. I just don't carry them with me anymore. My therapist once said healing isn't about getting back to who you were before. It's about becoming who you are now, knowing what you've been through. That stuck with me. I'm not the same woman who booked fake business trip flights for a man lying to her face. I'm not the woman who poured her savings into a college fund for a kid who'd thank someone else for it. I'm not the woman who shrunk herself to keep a household running while everyone else took her for granted. I'm Elise. I'm 44 now. I live in a city I chose for myself. I wake up early, drink coffee on my balcony, and write things people want to read. I get emails from women telling me they found the courage to leave a toxic marriage after hearing my story. I get DMs from girls who grew up with stepmoms that loved them deeply and now see the love they missed. Sometimes I cry reading those messages, not because they make me sad, but because they remind me that none of this was in vain. I didn't lose everything. I just lost people who were never really mine, and in their place, I found something else, peace, purpose, and a version of myself I never thought I'd meet. Would I do it all again? No. But I'm glad it happened, because now I know what it means to survive, to walk away, to build something new with your own two hands. I used to think starting over at my age would be tragic, like the world had passed me by. Now, it feels like I'm just getting started. So, no. I don't regret the phone call that got him to confess. I don't regret blocking them both. I don't regret the silence. That was the cost of peace, and I paid it in full. And I'm finally living in the quiet I always deserved. Story 3. It was 7:15 a.m. in Charleston when my world shattered with a ping. My daughter, Zoe, was smearing avocado on her high chair tray, giggling to herself. Just a normal Tuesday morning. Except it wasn't. Because that's when I got the email. The subject line? Moving forward. No warning. No preamble. Just that. Inside was a photo, my husband Nathan with his arms around a young blonde woman. Early 20s maybe. They were standing on the deck of our lake cabin, my lake cabin. The one we bought last spring. The one we'd said would be our escape from the world. And beneath the photo, his message. I've moved in with Lauren. The cabin's mine now. My attorney will be in touch. Don't contest it, your name isn't on the deed. I didn't drop my coffee mug. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. But I felt something primal crack open inside me. Fury, clean and bright. Nathan really thought this would be it, a neat little email and a smug photo to end 5 years of marriage? He thought I'd whimper or beg. Maybe he forgot who he married. I stared at Zoe, still babbling to herself with oatmeal in her curls. I looked up at our wedding photo on the wall, us grinning like idiots in Maui. Him with his perfect teeth. Me in a dress I thought I'd only wear once. I'd built a life with this man. Now he was playing house with some Instagram reject. I set my coffee down slowly, opened my laptop, and replied, "Are you sure you want to go this route? Might want to double check that paperwork." Then I hit send, blocked his email, blocked his number, and I smiled. He had no idea who he just declared war on. Back when Nathan and I met, I was already running a decent-sized digital design studio. He liked to say he helped me turn it into something real. What he meant was, he liked telling people that he was the brains behind my company. Truth? My business tripled in size after our wedding without his involvement. I just let him believe whatever narrative made him feel useful. The lake cabin? Bought it with business profits. But Nathan insisted we put it under his name for tax reasons. I wasn't stupid. I had my lawyer draft an agreement outlining that. While the deed bore his name, the money and therefore the asset was mine. Last few months, he'd been escaping to the cabin for quiet time to handle some merger at his job. Meanwhile, I was juggling Zoe's colic, client meetings, and breastfeeding marathons at 3 a.m. I remember thinking, must be nice. Apparently, what he really needed was space to play sugar daddy to a grad school dropout. I grabbed Zoe from her high chair and kissed the top of her head. "Let's go wreck someone's life, baby girl." In my office, I opened my secure server, pulled up the cabin's surveillance system because, yeah, I'd installed cameras. Nathan never asked, never thought to check. There he was, over the last few months, parading Lauren around like it was their home, eating off our wedding china, sleeping in my bed. She even had the audacity to wear my robe. I called Jenna, my lawyer, and forwarded the footage. I wasn't done. My phone buzzed text from my assistant, Kat. "You have to see Lauren's Instagram." A dozen pictures. Her, twirling on our dock, drinking champagne on our porch. One caption, "New beginnings with the love of my life." That ring on her finger? It was my grandmother's. I went ice cold. I opened our joint account. My stomach twisted. The college fund I'd set up for Zoe? Drained. Over $90,000. Gone. Transferred yesterday. Destination. A new account I didn't recognize. He'd been planning this. Quietly bleeding us dry while I changed diapers and wrote pitch decks. I called the bank. Froze everything. Then called Jenna again. "Let's burn it all down," I said. By noon, my house was quiet. Zoe was napping, and Jenna was sitting across from me with a folder of receipts, contracts, and emails. "You have him," she said, tapping a security cam screenshot of Nathan lugging boxes of our stuff out of the cabin. "He stole company assets. That artwork, you bought it through your LLC. That's attempted theft." We weren't talking petty revenge anymore. This was legal warfare. Then Jenna's phone buzzed. She handed it to me. "Anonymous tip," she said. "You're gonna want to read this." It was a folder of Facebook screenshots. Lauren, bless her influencer heart, had posted to a private group about snagging a rich finance guy and how they were going to drain his idiot wife and ride off into the sunset. They'd been planning this for months. Even joked about how I was too busy with my Etsy side hustle to notice. Etsy. I nearly laughed. My side hustle was pulling in mid-7 figures annually. Nathan never knew. He never asked. More texts came in. Kat again. You'll want to sit for this. Lauren is the niece of Nathan's CEO, and Nathan's getting promoted to CFO. Suddenly, it all made sense. The timing, the merger, the money transfers. This wasn't about love or passion. This was strategy. He was positioning himself for a career leap and using Lauren to cozy up to the top brass. But he'd made 2 crucial mistakes. He underestimated me. He left a trail. And now it was my turn to play. The thing about betrayal is it doesn't hit all at once. It rolls in waves. First shock, then grief, then anger. But after that comes something far more dangerous. Clarity. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was upset. No, that part had already passed. I stayed up organizing folders, screenshots, financial records, building a war chest. Every receipt, every transfer, every late-night log in attempt to my business server. The plan didn't form out of revenge. It formed out of survival, and maybe a little satisfaction. By sunrise, I had what I needed. Hard proof that Nathan not only tried to steal from my business, but also committed federal crimes. Money laundering, corporate espionage, wire fraud. The offshore accounts? Yeah, I found those too. Lauren wasn't exactly careful with her digital footprint. At 6:47 a.m., Jenna arrived with a gallon of black coffee and a look in her eyes I hadn't seen since law school finals. "We're not just going for divorce," she said, setting down her laptop. "We're going for blood." Zoe stirred upstairs. I went to get her, kissed her on the forehead, and whispered, "Mommy's got this." By 9:00, Jenna and I were knee-deep in the details. And that's when Kat barged in, breathless. "He's trying to access the company's server. From the cabin." My jaw clenched. "Let him in," Kat blinked. "You serious?" "Yep. We'll mirror the server. Give him just enough to feel smart. And then cut the cord." She nodded and got to work. Meanwhile, Jenna drafted a letter to Nathan's company board. Not just about the affair, honestly. I didn't care about that anymore, but about what he'd done with sensitive information, financial records, and illegal asset transfers. But there was more. Nathan didn't just betray me. He tried to sink my business to push forward a merger that directly benefited his future father-in-law. Robert Lauren's uncle, the CEO, had been eyeing my company for months. They hated that I disrupted their supply chain with fair trade contracts and eco-labor policies. I was the moral wrench in their very dirty machine. And Nathan? He was their inside man, until he wasn't. By noon, the security feed at the cabin lit up. Nathan was back. So was Lauren. And because irony loves an audience, Robert, they were drinking wine in my kitchen, to my glassware, eating cheese off a board I'd made from reclaimed oak, toasting to a smooth promotion. I could hear them clearly thanks to the hidden audio feed Nathan never knew existed. Rookie mistake. "To the new CFO," Robert said, raising his glass. "And to the merger," Nathan chimed in. Lauren grinned. "And to that clueless wife. She'll be too busy chasing diaper rash to stop us." I didn't flinch. Just hit record. "Back on my screen," Kat yelled from her office. "He's in. He thinks he's accessing the core files." I smiled. "Let him download whatever he wants. But those files are decoys," I finished, "filled with fake data. Enough to make him act." We watched as Nathan clicked through the mirrored portal. He didn't know we'd flagged his IP, or that the IT team from my company was watching from 3 states away. "Wait for it," I said. "He's gonna get cocky." And he did. Minutes later, I got a text from an anonymous number. It was him. "You really should have taken the divorce deal. By next month, your company will be gone." I just sent back a smiley face. Jenna hit send on the board email at 2:00 p.m. sharp. Evidence packet attached. Security footage. Bank records. Internal messages between Lauren and Nathan. Even emails between Nathan and Robert, casually talking about tanking my market value through a merger leak. It wasn't just unethical, it was illegal and stupid. By 2:47 p.m., we were watching live footage from the cabin when Robert's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, froze. "Emergency board meeting?" he read out loud. Nathan laughed. "Over what?" "We've covered our tracks." Except they hadn't. Lauren's phone started blowing up. Then Nathan's. Notifications, calls, voicemails. Panic set in. "They know," Robert muttered, pacing. Lauren looked at Nathan. "What did you do?" "I didn't," he started. "Oh, you did," I said aloud, to no one, just enjoying the moment. Then the sound of tires on gravel. Red and blue lights flickering on the security cam. Police. Turns out, when you try to destroy someone's company using stolen data, move money into offshore accounts, and forge access to confidential servers, you attract attention. And not just from lawyers. From the FBI. Nathan walked out first, hands raised, still insisting the house was his. Lauren was crying. Robert was on the phone shouting something about miscommunication. Didn't matter. I watched them all get placed in the back of separate cars. The doors slammed shut. "Mommy?" Zoe called from the other room. "Be right there, sweetheart," I said. But not before I opened my safe and pulled out one last piece of insurance. A folder marked Legacy. Everything I ever documented about Nathan's firm, including shady offshore transfers I spotted years ago while helping him with his finances. I never thought I'd use it, but here we were. The email I sent that night wasn't just to Nathan's company board. It was to the SEC. By the time the sun dipped low over the marshes, I was rocking Zoe on the porch swing, watching fireflies dance through the humid air. The lake cabin, it was mine again, in every way. Nathan's name was off the deed, his accounts frozen, the funds he stole, tracked and reclaimed. Lauren's influencer brand, canceled overnight. Turns out, helping your boyfriend commit fraud isn't the vibe. Robert, quietly retired. And my company, thriving. Turns out, ethical business models are even more appealing when you've just taken down a corporate monster. But I wasn't done yet. Because Nathan made one last mistake. He thought this was about money, but it was never about money. It was about Zoe, and what I would and wouldn't let anyone do to the life I was building for her. And now I was going to finish what he started, one press release at a time. It took less than a week for everything. Nathan built to collapse. His boss? Gone. His promotion? Revoked. His name? All over the morning news. Local headlines read, CFO, nominee under federal investigation for corporate espionage, fraud, and theft. It would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. This man who once mocked me for running a digital hobby, just tanked his whole life trying to destroy mine, all because he couldn't handle the fact that his wife out-earned, outsmarted, and outplayed him. And the best part? I never raised my voice, never slammed a door, just opened a few files and let the truth do the talking. A few days later, Jenna and I were sitting in my office with mugs of tea, going over the final divorce filings. Clean, efficient, irrefutable. "He's trying to negotiate supervised visitation for Zoe," she said, tapping her pen against the paper. "After what he pulled, he's lucky he even gets a petition hearing." I stared at the picture on my desk. Zoe, asleep in a hammock at the lake cabin. Peaceful, safe, innocent. "Let him try," I said. "He's not getting anywhere near her without going through me. And he won't survive that path." Jenna gave me a smile that wasn't really a smile. "You know, I've never enjoyed a case as much as this one." "Funny," I said. "I never thought I'd enjoy burning my life down either. But watching him go down, it's like watching weeds get pulled by the roots." Nathan did try to apologize. Sent a letter handwritten, which I'm sure he thought would seem more sincere. He wrote that he lost sight of himself, that power clouded his judgment, that he never stopped loving me or Zoe. You ever see someone set their house on fire and then ask if they can come in for a glass of water? Yeah, no thanks. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Meanwhile, Zoe and I were rebuilding not from ashes, but from something stronger. The lake cabin became more than just a retreat. It became our sanctuary. I replaced the linens, repainted the bedroom, donated every mug and plate they used. I even planted lavender along the path to the dock, something to keep the memory of betrayal from lingering in the air too long. On the weekends, I'd sip coffee while Zoe played in the sand near the water, and sometimes I'd think about the night it all broke open. Nathan standing in my kitchen, raising a glass to his future. Lauren giggling beside him, Robert eyes gleaming with greed. They thought they were writing the first chapter of some power fairy tale, but all they did was hand me the match. You want to know what the real revenge is? It's not watching him get hauled off by federal agents. Not the frozen accounts, not the headlines, not the way his friends suddenly forgot his name. It's the fact that I'm thriving, and he can't stop it. My company? We closed a deal with a massive European sustainability firm. 2 weeks after everything blew up, our name was on every news outlet, but not for scandal, for ethics, for transparency, for doing what his old company pretended to stand for. The publicity? Priceless. My team grew by 20%. I promoted 2 women into senior positions, Nathan once said, weren't ready. And I made sure to triple their salaries from what they used to make under his mentorship program. Yeah, karma has direct deposit now. As for Lauren, last I heard, she moved back to Ohio. Her influencer deals dried up. Apparently, brands don't love associating with felons or CEOs' nieces who broadcast insider trading over brunch mimosas. And Robert? Facing multiple investigations. He resigned, citing health reasons. I'm guessing the stress of federal scrutiny isn't great for your blood pressure. But let me be honest, it's not like I walked away untouched. There were moments when it hurt. When I'd wake up in the middle of the night and reach for someone who wasn't there. When Zoe asked for her dad, and I didn't know what to say. When my hands shook remembering how close I came to losing everything. But I learned something. I am not the woman he tried to leave behind. I am not the business he tried to sabotage. I am not the wife, or the ex-wife, or the mistake he thinks I'll ever be. A few months later, I got an email from a journalist, someone doing a story on corporate ethics in the post-scandal world. She asked if I'd be open to an interview. I agreed. Under one condition, I didn't want it to be about revenge. I wanted it to be about resilience, because revenge feels good for a moment. But resilience? That changes everything. We sat on the cabin deck during the interview, the sun reflecting off the lake, Zoe playing nearby with her stuffed bear, the one Nathan never even noticed she loved. The journalist asked me, "What would you say to women who feel stuck, like they can't fight back?" I looked at her, thought about everything, every lie, every late-night cry, every document I quietly saved without even knowing why. And I said, don't wait for someone else to hand you power. Take it back the moment they try to steal it. She nodded. That's going in the headline. The last box I unpacked at the cabin held something I wasn't sure I'd keep. Nathan's email. Moving forward. I printed it, framed it, and hung it in my new office. People ask why. Why keep something so painful? Because it's not pain anymore. It's a reminder that endings can be brutal, but beginnings, if you're brave enough, are better. Sometimes, when Zoe's asleep and the house is quiet, I sit by the window with a glass of wine and let the silence settle. The wind whispers through the trees, and I think about the version of me from that first morning, the one holding her coffee as her world fell apart. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to become unstoppable. And now she sleeps peacefully, knowing no one will ever try to take what's hers again. Because the next time someone thinks they can walk over her, she won't wait. She'll build a road and let them watch from behind as she walks away.